Welcome to ACC Nation, featuring sports news and special guest interviews. Here's Will Ojanen and Jim Quist.
Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ojanen. And I'm Jim Quist. We're going to take a look at ACC football action and a little bit more. We're also going to take a brief look at our newest ACC Nation Power Poll. Some interesting things there that will let you know where you can find the entire list a little later in the program. But let's start out, Will, with the latest, because now we're actually into a point where the rankings actually kind of make sense. Though there was some movement in the AP, which to be honest with you, I scratched my head over, and I just thought, well, boy, you want to talk about I don't know. I think it was kind of a stupid move, but the coaches also reflect that. So let's take a look at the top five, and that's where this issue arises. The AP says Texas is number one now, while the coaches are firmly entrenched with Georgia at number one. And that's where I have my problem, and I want to find out whether or not you have any thoughts on whether Texas ought to be number one or Georgia ought to be number one, and which one and why.
I would probably just if you're just going to base it off resume right now, would probably give it to Texas. Just because they went in the big house and beat Michigan, where we look at what Georgia did over the weekend and barely beat Kentucky, mostly because their coach decided to punt in plus territory with 3 minutes left. Basically being a chicken. Gobble, 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 bark, 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 bark. And that pretty much cost him the game. I just feel like Texas
isn't smart.
No, Kirby is smart. It's Mark Stoops,
okay,
who is the chicken.
IDS. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Texas and Georgia, they got a little split down the middle there. My thought was, granted, I thought, well, Georgia, yeah, they didn't look great against Kentucky at all. In fact, I was rooting for Kentucky to beat them. It's probably the one and only time that you'll ever catch me rooting for Kentucky on anything. But in that particular instance, I thought it would have been fun to watch it totally upend everything. It upended things anyway. But Texas, I don't know. I was reading the write-up in a couple of different places about why Texas ought to be number one. And it was people fawning over the quarterback that came in off the bench and led them to the win. And it was like, no, you're wrong direction.
Arch Manning. College football, Arch Manning. We gotta build up the algorithm, Jim. Gotta get the viewers.
Shiver up my spine, man. It's like
sound like Rodney Dangerfield with that.
I don't get no respect. None at all. Arch is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I have seen his tape from high school, and I've watched quite a few years of his tape. And he's a good quarterback. There's no doubt about it. And he is somebody who can make all the difference in the world. He came in off the bench and made a difference and helped to push Texas to a win. Now,
and we got to qualify that and say it was a pretty bad opponent too. But
yeah, so for me, it's like, hello, really. I think even with that poor performance against Kentucky, I still would have kept Georgia at number 1, which is exactly what fine folks in the coaches poll did. And now the top 5 overall in the AP, it's Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Alabama and Georgia are going to be playing each other here this coming week. That should be fun. It's going to be interesting to see who takes the biggest nosedive in the poll, or if anybody takes a nosedive in the poll, because you know how it goes. Over the coaches poll, it's Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Ole Miss. Same thing, basically. Anyway, don't have any problems for the most part with that top 5. Here are the ACC +1 teams on the AP side of things. Miami is at number 8. Notre Dame at 17, Louisville at 19, and Clemson at 21. Receiving votes category at number 28, it's Syracuse. Up next at 30, it's Boston College. Number 35, Cal. 40, North Carolina, and 43, Pitt. Over in the coaches poll, they have Miami at 11, Notre Dame at 18, Clemson 19, and Louisville 20. And their receiving votes category has Syracuse at 30, Pitt 32, North Carolina 36, NC State 37, Cal 38, and Boston College 42. I would say that, early in the season, that's good representation by the conference, the teams in the conference, and so far, so good.
Yeah, not bad. More teams I thought will get ranked. Just the whole Boston College thing, like, I don't know. I didn't think they should have been ranked, but the coaches poll basically, like, they went from in there to almost out completely, like not even getting a vote for losing a 6-point game on the road to an SEC opponent. That just doesn't sit right with me either. I mean, but I think the coaches poll is kind of a sham anyway. So
I'm sure it's not the coaches for the most part voting on.
Yes, the SIDs and whatnot.
Yeah,
people,
and what the hell do SIDs know anyway? I mean, come on. I thought, well, okay, Boston College has kind of proven themselves so far. They've come along. They're doing well. Perhaps pushing them into the top 25 this early was a mistake. At the same time, dropping a bombshell on them for what I thought was a very competitive game. I enjoyed that game immensely. I thought Boston College did really well, and I'm very impressed with this team and what Coach O'Brien has done there. Now, are they top 25? It's anybody's guess. They have plenty of opportunity to work themselves back into that top 25 and to prove themselves worthy of having a slot there. I think sometimes prior to going into certain matchups, that the voters will vote a team higher. They'll make them ranked. They won't make them super, super ranked. They'll make them in that lower, 20 to 25. They'll get, some to make a difference in order to have a matchup. And then they're just as quickly they'll dump them right out if they don't do well. I think they did fairly decently against Mizzou.
Yeah.
And in fact, how in the hell is Missouri still ranked as high as they are is beyond me, because
it's conference affiliation. That's about it.
That's the point. Yes, indeed. Okay. The power rankings from ESPN, which I don't typically get into, but just thought I'd throw these teams out here. This is ACC +1 again. Miami at number 6, Clemson 17, Louisville at 19, and Notre Dame at number 20. So they have a lot of confidence in Miami and what Miami has produced so far. Gosh, I hope like hell that this isn't setting this team up for a big fall, because we've seen it in the past. And, people go, well, why would you bring that up? Because it's happened so many times before. And I'd rather see fans not get completely crushed and be calling for a coach's head again already, just because of one game or whatever. But I'm sure that, it's sitting there. It's waiting to happen. It's waiting to be served. It's on the buffet. If you want it, go get it.
Give it time. Once they should they lose a game, and in all likelihood they will, we'll hear it. Especially with the way they played these first 3 weeks, and we'll get more into that, in a little bit. But
we need a new coach already. Let's go down the games. The first game is NC State, and so help me. My wife is from Louisiana, and she's not much of a football fan. She'll watch football with me because it's a thing. She supports me in watching football. When she heard this, her head popped up. And she knows how much I like to get on announcers for saying and doing stupid things. It is not La Tech any more than it's Va Tech. It's Louisiana Tech and Virginia Tech. Get it right. Quit calling them by the La or Va. It's stupid. You don't call Georgia Juh. All right, NC State, 30. Louisiana Tech, 20. I'm a little baffled, Will. What the hell's up with North Carolina State, man? Excuse me, NC State.
You're going to full spell one out. Okay, good. You're going to go Louisiana Tech, but it's NC. Yeah, you got to get. All right, there. Go North Carolina State. Okay.
Yep.
But no, yeah, it was a little surprising how this game played out. Grayson McCall got actually hurt in this game. Was replaced by a freshman, CJ Bailey. Stepped in, went 13 to 20, 156 yards. But this game was pretty competitive, through the first half, and then really in the third quarter a ways. But for the game, NC State outrushed Louisiana Tech 151 to 43, and then outscored them 24 to 3 in the second half. And they had the ball for over 36 and a half minutes in this game. And I think it's concerning that this offense hasn't really gotten going yet against Louisiana Tech team that frankly isn't that good. They should have probably beat them by about 3 scores. It is a little confusing. They're just not clicking on all cylinders right now, and I don't know where if that's, I don't know what all cylinders will be, quite frankly, because this is the fact that you have this offensive stat, Robert Anae, somebody who everyone gushes over, and quite frankly, it looks like he is. Let me think. I'm trying to think of a song that would best describe him, but basically, you're one hit wonder. That's basically what it was. The 2021 was a 1 year wonder. It was everything coming together all at once, and just because you did it once doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it again. And I think I'm just kind of wondering if he's going to be able to get it going, with this team this year.
Find out. That was I was on board with the Pack at the beginning of the season. I was thinking, here's a team that has a lot of potential and should be within probably the top 5 teams in the conference this season.
Yeah.
And anyway,
And
uh,
I wasn't going to overreact to the performance against Western Carolina in week one. I wasn't going to worry about it because it was an FCS opponent, and you had a much tougher opponent, Tennessee, in week two, and then got obliterated the way you did. But I think we see now that Tennessee is one of, if not the best offense in the country, with the way they've performed these last couple of weeks, putting 50 plus on NC State, and then they probably could have hung 100 on their opponent, their most recent opponent this week if they wanted to. And I think they're going to be a very tough foe for teams the rest of the year. But turning around and following it up with that kind of performance against Louisiana Tech, yeah, some alarm bells are going off a little bit.
yeah. Speaking of alarm bells, oh, God, we talked about this last week about, there's no way in the world this is going to happen. We just didn't see this. Well, there's that sneaking suspicion. There's something hanging in the back of our brains, back in the lizard part of our brain, that was saying Florida State is going down a crap path here, and they're stepping in it left and right. And God, if they lose this game, ooh, wow. And sure enough, 20-12, Memphis upsetting. I don't know if it's upsetting or not. It's upsetting to the fans, but it's not an upset otherwise. Memphis won 20-12, beating the Knowles, and I'm baffled is an understatement.
Yeah, this is a 5 alarm fire, folks. This is pretty. Uh, I don't even know if there's a word to describe how much of a mess this program is right now, and it's
Dumb
it's
stuff.
got to be time. This is where Mike Norvell's got to just buck up and just make a quarterback change.
Yeah.
DJU is 16 of 30, 201 yards, but threw a pick. But I mean, and again, it's not all on him, but he's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The team averaged 1.5 yards a carry, but
Mm-hmm.
despite that, they're still throwing the ball too much. If you have the supposed good offensive line, utilize them in the run game. Get Toafili some more carries.
Pound, pound, pound.
And Norvell, he's certainly got deserves his fair share of criticism for a lot of this. And then there was a decision on the last touchdown they scored that made it 20-12. He went for two for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure why. And it kind of hurt them later. It would have, especially if they would have gone down and scored again, they would have had to go for two regardless. Whereas, you go down and kick the extra point, you're only down 7. You could have just kicked the extra point there to go for the tie or potentially go for the win if you wanted to go for two. But again, the Seminoles had only 238 yards of offense in this game, and for supposed, yeah, that's not good. And it doesn't help either. Memphis had the ball for over 36 minutes in this game, and yeah, it's officially panic season in Tallahassee.
Well, you were talking about that last week about the button, hitting the old panic button. Boom. There's there's just this mushroom cloud. Is that the button?
It's my mouse, but it's the only button I
Yeah.
have handy, so we're just going to use that as the panic button.
Got a lot of buttons on my shirt.
Just hit the button.
Anyway,
It might look a little PG-13.
I almost pulled this up earlier. I'm going to put my hand across part of this because I don't want to create mayhem, but they are in dire need of some help. And wow.
Yeah, it might need to. We all might need to donate for that disaster of a football team.
And God, man, I feel for, I feel for you guys. You were sold. There's so many people are saying they were sold a bill of goods. I don't know if that's completely an accurate way of looking at it, but it certainly felt like that. There was so much hype over this team prior to the season, and God help us if we were part of that. I apologize. Um, I certainly had no reason to believe that they weren't anything other than a really good team that should have been at the very top of the ACC standings at this point. And I don't even know what to think.
I
So
would I would add real quick before we move on that the whole like calling for Mike Norvell's head thing is just kind of stupid.
it's always
They're
stupid.
not going to fire him,
No.
coming off an undefeated regular season and and having and struggling this season. You cannot be that knee jerk. Otherwise, you're just going to recycle coaches, and nobody's going to want to work for you.
Yeah. And you can't afford it. So
Nope.
just the reality of the world, man. You can't keep, like you said, you can't recycle coaches constantly
Yeah.
or go through that process. Mizzou over Boston College 27-21. As I said earlier, this was a good game. I enjoyed it, and I was very impressed by Boston College. That's a hungry team. It's well coached. That's the X factor, as we pointed out on our podcast with Mitch. It was like, holy crud, man. You can see the difference in how this team performs under this coach as opposed to the prior coach.
But one thing I just want to rewind real quick before we get into this game, talking about recycling coaches, but a lot of times you're not going to be able to rehire coaches, kind of like when George Steinbrenner kept hiring Billy Martin back in the 70s and 80s. It's
Sanity.
not going to be, yeah. All right, but on to this game. I applaud Boston College. They played pretty well in this game. Um, this game was a lot closer than I expected it to be. I thought Missouri was going to win by a couple scores, definitely easily. Thomas Castellanos played well, 249 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought he had a good game and continues that thing we talked about with Mitch, that he was kind of the MVP of the offense, and he showed it again. He looked really good. Concerns though is they only averaged 1.8 yards per carry on the ground, and they gave up 440 yards to Missouri. And now, let's be real, I mean, we got to be Missouri has one of the best receivers in the country in Luther Burden, who went off in this game, and no shame in that. Sometimes that's just going to happen. One of my favorite moments in this game, Missouri at one point had a second down and 59.
Yeah.
Second and 59.
And what
Now,
did they do, Will?
how did they get there? Well, first down, incompletion. Then there was a personal foul on Missouri, sets them back. It was, by that point, okay, second and 25. All right, second and 25. Then you get called for an eligible man downfield. Second and 30. And then after that, and then he had two more personal fouls, and one ended up being enforced half a distance to the goal. So when all was said and done, you ended up with second and 59. Needless to say, they did not get the first down on that drive and ended up punting. But still, I thought that was just really, really funny how things can go in that game.
Yeah. Um, wow. Interesting. It was an interesting game. There were moves on the part of both teams. I think that they hurt themselves with some of the stupid fouls or penalties that occurred. Next game up, the Keydets picked up their paycheck from Georgia Tech, and as always, walked away sore and wishing that they hadn't played. 59-7, the final score. Georgia Tech over the Virginia Military Institute Keydets.
Yeah, we don't really need to get into this game much, but I think the most important part for VMI is you got a hefty paycheck to get your ass handed to you.
Yep.
One thing I will note, Georgia Tech now after this game, they've played 4 games. They have not allowed a sack. So credit to that offensive line for keeping Haynes Keen upright. Now some of that too is his escapability out of the pocket, but still the fact is they have not allowed a sack, and that's a lot of the reason they've been pretty successful so far this year.
Next favorite game on the list here, Pitt and West Virginia, the backyard brawl. Excellent game. Kept fans going back and forth. Final score there, Pitt coming out with a 38-34 win. And the question mark in my head out of that whole thing was something completely stupid and irrelevant. Why some people were calling the quarterback Holstein instead of Holstein. I have a friend whose last name is Holstein, and so it just seemed a little odd. Maybe that's the way he pronounces it. Anyway, big game for Pitt, man. They have definitely shown that they're full of themselves and very capable of winning a game. Of course, Pat Narduzzi is always full of himself and was fined $5,000 for jabber John about the refs. Pat is worth every dollar because I think you were accurate about your statement there.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched the game, but I didn't think the officials were that bad. Somebody would have to point out to me, the missed calls. But we all know Pat Narduzzi's grumpy and he is capable of doing that. And most of the time I'm not gonna fault a coach for, criticizing the refs and getting the fine because most of the time it's warranted. Again, I didn't see anything, and definitely doesn't mean I didn't think they did a good or bad job. It just didn't pop for me.
Yeah.
But once again, the backyard brawl delivers. Ever since this rivalry has come back, it has been nothing but great games. You remember the one a couple of years ago to open the season was one of the best games of the season, when Pitt won that one at their place, and then obviously West Virginia won a Morgantown last year, and then this year Pitt came back from down 10 in the final 5 minutes, when I felt like that West Virginia had it kind of sealed up, but it just shows just what the right system for a quarterback can do wonders. We've seen Eli Holstein in this one, 301 yards and 3 touchdowns, and just the confidence and just the ability he has in this system under K Bell. It just feels like the perfect marriage. Now, at least for now, we'll see, if, when they face adversity, how they overcome it. But I do have some concerns. They were not very good in the trenches. They only averaged 2.7 yards per game, or yards per carry. Des Reed struggled in this game on the ground, but they also gave up over 4 yards per carry to West Virginia, who, I mean, they've got a pretty solid run game, but it's not like elite either.
Right.
So concerns for me there. But still, most importantly, Pitt came back, won the game, looked good doing it, and I will be very, very shocked if they lose next week before they head into their bye.
Exactly. Next game up is another, we'll just briefly mention it. Miami over Ball State, 62-0. Not really much to talk about there other than the fact that the Miami is really, hitting on all cylinders here, and moving ahead, we'll definitely be looking at this team closer, because I think if they keep playing the way they're playing, this will definitely be that final. They'll be in the final 12.
Yeah, it's really hard to gauge Miami right now. I mean, this game they had 750 total yards. Cam Ward and Emory Williams combined for 507 yards and 6 touchdown passes. But yeah, you look at their competition, you got a big dumpster fire in Florida who will probably be moving on from their coach any week now. An FCS school and Ball State, who is not exactly elite competition. I wanna see this Miami team when they play someone a little more on their level.
Yeah. So they have to, again, they have to prove themselves. Duke with a good win, any win at this point is a good win. 26-21 over UConn. Closer than I would have imagined in one aspect, but Duke is slowly but surely putting something together here.
Yeah, they're undefeated 3-0. Not the most impressive effort in this game. They were actually trailing to UConn 21-17 going into the fourth quarter. Malik Murphy ended up throwing 3 touchdown passes in this game. They got a great game on the ground from Star Thomas, 22 carries, 122 yards. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to last, but still, Duke's 3-0. They're doing what they need to do. The competition's only get a little more tougher. We're going to see what this team is really made of.
Up next on our list, North Carolina with a big win over North Carolina Central. 45-10, the final score there. Again, not a lot to talk about other than the Heels kind of taking their time putting things together. I don't think there's as much there to play with this year as there has been in the past. So they're trying to find who they are, and it's a good thing that they've had the games that they've had so far.
Yeah, they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position post Max Johnson. It was announced this week that he is back in Chapel Hill. Per my speculation after it happened, I thought he would be at Hennepin County Medical Center in downtown Minneapolis with the surgery that Johnson had on his leg. And his father, Brad, came out and said that's where he was. So it doesn't surprise me. Hennepin County Medical Center is a really, really great hospital downtown. And I just happen to have a friend who's a nurse there. So I will endorse that place for her. But yeah, this game, it was 17-10 going into the fourth quarter. That was really surprising me. Like I wasn't watching this game, but I had it up as like on the score, on the score thing, just kind of watching it go along. And I was surprised, when I saw 17-10 going to the fourth. I'm like, all right, I may have to check into this. And then I come back a little bit later to find out, hey, North Carolina outscored NC Central 28-0 in the fourth quarter, outgained them 209-19, which basically means they just kind of wore them down and put in pretty much showed who the dominant team was. Now, this offense is basically a Maureen Hampton right now. It probably will be this season. So wrap them in bubble wrap, keep them healthy. 25 carries, 210 yards. In this game, they ran as a team, they ran for 330 yards and 5 touchdowns, averaging 8 yards per carry. Now, one name I wanted to highlight defensively is Javari Ritzy, who has 5 sacks on the season for the Tar Heels, which is actually tied for most in the nation. One of those guys that you don't hear the name, but he's having a big season defensively for the Tar Heels.
Next on our list is Virginia Tech, in-state sort of rivalry there, and a nice growing rivalry. I really appreciate the fact that ODU has really come from nowhere in building their program and is giving the bigger boys in the state of Virginia a little bit of a run for their money. Final score, the Hokies 37, the Monarchs 17. There's still some things that need to be adjusted with Virginia Tech. I mean, ODU is not is not a powerhouse.
Mm-mm.
So this score should have been wider. And the fact that it's not tells me that there's some things that are just not clicking yet. So,
Yeah, so this was actually a competitive game at halftime. Tech was up 14-10 at the half, and we're starting to feel shades of that game. I think it was in Justin Fuente's second year where they kind of shockingly pulled off the upset. And you were starting to think that was happened, but then the third quarter happened. Virginia Tech outgained ODU 114-0 in the third quarter and pretty much sailed from there. They ended up outscoring ODU 23-7 in the second half. They ended up running for 89 yards as a team. Kyron Jones had 117. Bashal Tootin had 115. I will say, on the positive side, defensively, they held ODU to passing 6 of 14 for 50 yards. But on the other, and ODU was 2 of 13 on third down in this game, but they did give up 243 yards on the ground at over 6 yards per carry. So, I thought this team would be much better against the run, and at least this week it wasn't. So that is a bit of a concern. And then I think people are kind of learning that as much as Kyron Jones is a good runner, he's still got a lot to work with in the passing game. He needs some work there. So I think they're trying to make him beat him deep or whatnot. So I'm very curious to see where this Virginia Tech team goes from here because they're not who a lot of people thought they were, at least in terms of a dark horse champion or dark horse team to make the ACC championship game.
yeah, this team was talked about in the preseason as being like top 8, maybe even top 5. And no, at least not now, not at this point. Doesn't mean that this season's got plenty left. So it's like the fact that, people really can't come out and say, hey, even with Florida State, my God, you can come out and say, well, they've lost 3 games and they've crashed and burned. But what if they find the answer and they win out from there? Doesn't mean that they're going to go to a playoff, but it does mean that if all that stuff comes together, just like with Virginia Tech, if it all comes together, which sometimes happens with teams, it takes a couple of games in to finally click, at which point they start rolling on people. Then you start talking again about, oh, well, maybe this is a top 5 within the ACC. So we'll see. This next game, Wake Forest, I'm not surprised by this score at all. I would have been a little bit more impressed with the Deacs if they had scored more than 6. The final score against Ole Miss, which is ranked in the top 5, by the way, folks. And they were that week, and they are this week, 40-6, the final score.
Yeah, no, this result certainly doesn't surprise me. Ole Miss, it's just like Tennessee. They're a very high powered, potent offense, and they're going to put up points in bunches. They were up 20. They scored 20 in the first quarter, and I feel like they might have let their foot off the gas a little bit in this game, knowing that were just handling handling business so well, and then come to find out after the game that Wake Forest decided not to do their part and go to start or to Ole Miss next year for their game, and is paying the buyout for that. So not exactly good PR, I think, because they probably will lose by even more next year.
Most likely.
Yeah, they gave up 650 yards in this game. The offense ran the ball for an average of 1.4 yards per carry, gave up 4 sacks. Kind of concerning considering in the last 2 games, Hank Bachmeier has been sacked 10 times. That's if you want to have success in offense, my math tells me you should not be allowing your quarterback to get sacked 10 times in 2 games.
No. No, you shouldn't. Let's move on to this next game. Maryland over Virginia, 27-13. I will say that I am a little disappointed in some aspects of Virginia here. It's like, it's like they get going and things are clicking, and then it's like knuckleheaded stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, part of that is the age of their quarterback and the experience aspect too. So I'm not going to lay it all on him because that's really not where it belongs. But there's just some things there that need to be seasoned, matured, whatever.
Yeah. I thought Calandria kind of regressed in this game. Um, there were some moments where he looked like the guy from last year instead of the guy from the first two games of this year. Where it was some of the decisions he made. They ended up Virginia ended up turning the ball over 4 times. One of those was not his fault. It was just a fluke play where they were going back for a pass and he was trying to step out, like step towards the side, run towards the sideline. I don't know if he was gonna like throw it on the run or just take off himself. And as he was going by, his offensive lineman accidentally kicked the ball out of his hand and ended up being a fumble recovery by Maryland. And no, not his fault. That literally was just bad luck.
Right. That's
Where you want to be upset is the conservative red zone play calling. That was something when they got into the red zone on multiple occasions. The play calling was not there. They weren't aggressive at all and tried to do it. They just ran the ball a couple times, tried to set up for a field goal. Yeah, I know Will Bettridge is a good field goal kicker. He's only missed once this year, and it was a long field goal in a wet condition. And he's a good kicker, but you don't want to rely on that all the time. I don't think it didn't feel like that this team made any adjustments out of halftime, like where Maryland did. I mean, Maryland kind of kept shooting itself in the foot in the first half. I think committed 7 penalties in the first half, and I think one in the second half. Um, and then, like I said, just Virginia just kind of run back what it did, and they just couldn't get anything going. I will give the defense credit. I thought this was one of the more impressive defensive performances I've seen from Virginia in quite some time. Yeah, they gave up 27 points, but again, that's not necessarily all their fault. Um, I thought they actually ran the ball well in this game too, between Kobe Pace and Xavier Brown and Calandry to an extent. A player I do want to highlight is Antonio Clary, who missed all last season with an injury and played very, very well in this game. He had 14 tackles, and I was looking at the Pro Football Reference or Pro Football Focus grades for this game. He had like the second highest grade in the team, and I was like his grade was like in the 80s, and he's actually second in the ACC with 33 tackles, which for a guy coming off a season missing an injury to be the tackling machine he's been. I think it's really impressive with him and Jonas Sanker. I think they have one of the better safety combinations in the league. Um, One more thing on this, we'll talk. We talked before the season with friend of the show Jackie Franchulli about just the health of the offensive line, and they've been hit by injuries already. They only had 8 healthy linemen for this game. And then Ty Furnish left this game after throwing up on the field, which some of you might have seen the highlight of, and I did not need to see it. I don't know what kind of epidemic there's going on because this is apparently going on a lot in not just college football, but in the National Football League as well.
Yeah, and the epidemic that I see here, Will, is more like who the hell is directing these programs that they keep the camera on somebody bent over on the field throwing up? I mean, you know, back when I was overseeing production crews, it was pretty simple. You saw something like that, your finger would be on that switch in a heartbeat to the next camera shot.
They're willing to show vomit, but they won't show somebody on the field running on the field and getting obliterated.
Yeah, It's
I don't know. It
just
doesn't make sense to
weird.
me.
Yep. ACC After Dark game, Cal with a 31-10 win over San Diego State. Started off a little slow. Found myself putting in my first full better than 12-hour day watching football, and watched that game.
Attaboy.
And yeah, it was fun. I'm having a great time watching Cal this year.
Yeah, they're yeah, we're really going to finally get an opportunity to see them uh in kind of in a bigger spotlight coming up here very soon. Once they get into conference play. Like actually this Saturday when they will travel to Tallahassee, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But
Mhm.
I think this team is, I mean, because they're in California, you're not going to hear a lot of it, but we're now starting to see them a little bit in against some better opponents. We saw them go into Auburn to beat them last week, and force 5 turnovers. And I mean, San Diego State, they're still rebuilt. They're kind of rebuilding a little bit. They have a good a coach who I think will do pretty good there, but he just needs time. This game was a complete penalty fest. San Diego State 15 penalties, 120 yards. Cal had 12 for 113 yards. They ran for 275, averaging over 6.5 yards per carry, but they did allow 6 sacks of Fernando Mendoza, which is a bit of a concern. My favorite moment from this game is when Justin Wilcox grabbed the ref's mic and started yelling at the fans for throwing the cards that were given out pregame onto the field because they got two 15-yard penalties from it.
Yeah. Come on, people. Quit being stupid. Anyway, that's a look at this past week's games.
That's what you do when you give things to 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old people. They're still immature, and that's what they're gonna do.
I'm still immature, even after all these years. Uh, So, coming up exclusively on ACC Nation Radio. And if you haven't listened to us there, you can. You can go to our website at accnation.net and look up right there in the middle of the page. Basically, there's a direct link to the ACC Nation Radio. And we have the ACC Nation Power Poll, which is going to be up there before long. But we're going to give you a little taste of what Will and I are thinking right at this moment about who the top 3 ACC teams are in our power polls. And I'm sure that our power polls are not going to match up this season for a variety of reasons. So go ahead. Your top 3 teams and how they are stacked up here in the ACC.
So I'm gonna go 3-2-1 in mine. Number 3, I've got Clemson. Number 2, Louisville, and number 1, Miami.
Okay. All right. I'll just reverse it and go Miami at number 1, Clemson at number 2, and Louisville at number 3. You see, we already have a difference of opinion on that. The ACC Nation Power Poll is exclusively available on ACC Nation Radio, and that's coming up before too long. You can hear it on there. It'll be available in between some of the interviews that we have. You can also hear interviews on ACC Nation Radio, not only with Will and myself interviewing people and some of our looks at what's going on with the conference on a weekly basis, but also from our buddies over at All Sports Discussion. They have always got an interesting interview or discussion about what's going on with not only the ACC, but a variety of sports. And they're also available only on ACC Nation Radio. So make sure you go to accnation.net and check it out. Let's take a look, and we'll do this real quickly because we're running out of time here. Coming up this week, some thoughts on Stanford at Syracuse. That's on Friday night.
First ACC game for the Cardinal. Kind of curious how this will play out. Would definitely lean the orange in this one just because I feel like their offense is going to be too much for Stanford to overcome in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you that Syracuse is also on a bit of a roll here, and I think with their new coach, they have a different attitude about how to play football, and that's encouraging. It looks like the fans are supporting them, and when you get in the dome, it is a whole different environment. On Saturday, we've got James Madison taking on North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This could very well be uh, a real solid game. Because James Madison is pretty good, and North Carolina is not at its best right now. So I think there's somewhat of an even Steven going on here.
Um, where I would care is it JMU barely beat Gardner Webb in their last game. They were on bye last week, this most recent week, but they barely beat Gardner Webb 13-6 in their last game, and maybe with the bye they start to figure out. But JMU is kind of they're not what they've been in past years, just because their whole staff is basically in Indiana right now. But then again, I don't know what to make of North Carolina, but I do know they're going to have the best player on the field in Amari and Hampton. So I'll take the Tar Heels in this one.
Okay. Up next, this is going to be a solid game, I think. NC State and Clemson. Clemson has an opportunity here to prove that they are top dogs in the conference, and NC State, um, same thing. You get to show us whether you got it or not.
Yeah, I really don't know what to make of NC State now, coming off of these past few performances, and with Clemson having a week off to prepare for this game. Definitely give them the advantage in this one. I I don't like the point spread I have up in front of me is 20.5. I'm not sure I would touch the spread, to be honest with you, because I mean, I know Clemson's not going to put up whatever they did against App State against this team, but I I just need to see what their offense is really for me before I like make any grand declaration about the Tigers.
I think this is a great preview for what's going to be for the rest of the season in the conference. Virginia, Coastal Carolina. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting game. This was the return of a home and home that actually the home game in Charlottesville never happened because this was canceled a couple of years ago when the players were killed. Coastal Carolina is 3-0, but again, they haven't really played any. Well, they played Jacksonville State, beat them by 28. Played William and Mary, beat them by 19, and then won at Temple by 8. Virginia's a uh, currently a 3-point favorite in this game. So um, I think it is imperative that Virginia win the game, because just kind of looking at the rest of their schedule, um, I don't know if there are many more wins on the schedule, to be honest with you.
Next up is Georgia Tech at Louisville. Boy, this has all the earmarkings of a barn burner of a game.
Well, we're gonna know what Louisville is after this game, I think. We've seen them, dominate two an FCS team and another bad, G5 team, and we're gonna know what they are now after this. I mean, Georgia Tech is, really good. Is We obviously know they can score and whatnot. Would I think I'm gonna lean Louisville, but my confidence level is not like super high.
Rutgers at Virginia Tech.
Boy, this is gonna be an interesting one. Rutgers 2-0 and didn't really play anybody. They beat Howard, won 44-7, blew out Akron 49-17, but Akron's not good either. Um, Currently the line is Hokies by a field goal. Could definitely. I think this game could go either way, quite honestly. But I'll lean Hokies because they're at home.
Right. Youngstown State at Pitt. I'm not sure that that's. I don't.
Next.
Yeah. Duke at Middle Tennessee. Now, Middle Tennessee in the past has been a team to contend with, and Duke is really not at that point where they can easily handle,
Yeah.
people. So,
So Middle Tennessee is 1-2. They beat Tennessee Tech by 7, lost to Ole Miss 52-3, and then lost at home to Western Kentucky 49-21.
uh,
And
Duke's got this game.
yeah, I'm taking the Blue Devils. They're actually a 14-point favorite in this game.
See if we can upset anybody at SMU here. TCU at SMU.
It's kind of funny how things have changed with SMU when they went from another one of those dark horse teams to make the ACC championship game, and they're 2-1, have not looked very good. Obviously lost to BYU last time they played. TCU's been okay, 2-1 so far. They have they've beat Stanford by 7, obviously in the opener, and that was a good game. Shut out Long Island 45-0 and lost a 1-point game to UCF. This game's on the CW, but as we so far the trends say the CW is not the upset magic that it has been in the past couple of years, or since last year, I should say. I'm gonna go with a slight lean to TCU, but again, not very confident about it.
Yeah. Cal at Florida State. Boy, I don't even know where to go here.
Yeah, I am shocked that FSU is a favorite in this game. My line here has Florida State as a 2-point favorite. Um, until they prove something to me, I'm going away from them. So give me Cal.
Yeah. All right, Miami at USF. That should be a good game. That's a good good test for Miami.
Yeah, South Florida's 2-1. They lost 42-16 to Alabama, and if you didn't see that game, that game was actually much closer than the score indicates. South Florida's a good team. I just don't know. I just don't think they're good enough to beat the Hurricanes right now. So give me, even though this game is actually at their place in Tampa, but give me the Hurricanes.
And finally, Michigan State at Boston College.
Yeah, this is a game I probably would take the home team in. Michigan State is 3-0, but they barely beat FAU, barely beat Maryland, and then shut out Prairie View A&M. Okay, you shut out a HBCU school. Whoop-de-doo. I definitely think Boston College has played much, much better than them. So I would take the Eagles to win this one and go 3-1.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Hey, volleyball, real quick, because the last time around we talked about how the top or the top teams in the AVCA were looking, and Pitt is still number 1, Stanford is 2, Penn State 3, Louisville 4, Nebraska 5. Georgia Tech comes in at 13, and Florida State at 18. SMU arrives as a newcomer to the poll. They're at number 22. And in the receiving votes category, Miami had dropped out of the top 25, but they are at 29. Doesn't mean that they won't be right back in there before long. So, and a reminder again, you want to check out the latest ACC Nation Power Poll? Well, we're going to have it for you right here. Available on ACC Nation streaming radio exclusively. So go to accnation.net, click on the direct link. It'll take you there. And we have interviews and much, much more. It's all there on ACC Nation Radio. Be sure that you subscribe to ACC Nation Podcast. Do that on our webpage as well. And don't forget to subscribe. And you want to leave comments, we would love to hear from you. on our YouTube channel as well. So until next time, which means we will be having some guests here pretty soon to come in and talk football and a lot of other sports as well. I'm already looking at some other sports, including basketball, believe it or not, Will. Already looking ahead because, man, it's going to sneak up on us before long. So I'm looking at who we're going to have to come in and talk some basketball with us.
Yeah, season's a little over a month and a half away.
Yeah, it's very close.
Coming fast.
Indeed. So until next time, cheers.
School.
Thanks for listening to ACC Nation. Be sure to listen, like and subscribe to our podcast, radio, and YouTube channels by visiting accnation.net. Follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, Mastodon, Threads, Blue Sky and Reddit at ACC Nation.
ACC Nation.